I was standing in the kitchen during our annual Thanksgiving dinner when I realized I no longer existed. My father was holding court at the head of the table, telling a story about a hiking trip in the Andes, a trip I had taken alone 3 years ago. He was using my jokes, my specific observations about the local coffee, even the way I mimicked the guide's accent. When I caught his eye, he did not flinch. He just smiled, winked, and kept going. That is when the ice water hit my veins. He was not just my father anymore. He had spent years harvesting my life to build a better version of himself, and he was currently convincing my entire family that I was the imposter. It was not about the trip. It was about the fact that as I looked around the table, I saw my mother and my aunts nodding, laughing, and looking at him with the admiration that used to be reserved for my accomplishments. I was a ghost in my own childhood home. Growing up, my father was the sun. Everything revolved around his mood. When he was on, he was the most charismatic man in the room, a successful architect with a silver tongue. I worshipped him. Around my 14th birthday, things started to shift in a way that felt like a compliment at first. He started buying clothes exactly like mine. He would ask me about my music, my hobbies, even the slang my friends use. I thought we were finally bonding. There were red flags, though. I remember showing him a sketchbook I would been working on for months. He did not say good job. He looked at a specific shading technique I would developed and said, I actually showed you how to do that back in October. Remember, I had not even started that book in October. Another time, he forgot my birthday, but spent 3 hours explaining how his crushing workload was actually a sacrifice for my future. It felt like a small price to pay for his attention. I told myself he was just intense, a perfectionist who loved me so much he wanted to be part of every facet of my world. I did not realize he was actually scouting the terrain of my identity. He made me feel like we were a team, but in reality, he was just gathering intelligence. By the time I was 22, the mirroring became surgical. I moved back home for 6 months after graduation to save money. One Tuesday, I came home to find him sitting in my room, going through my old journals. When I confronted him, his face did not show guilt. It showed a strange, cold calculation. I am just trying to understand why you are so distant lately, he said, his voice dropping an octave into that soothing, paternal tone that always made me feel like the crazy one. If you were not so secretive, I would not have to go to these lengths. He turned it on me instantly. I ended up apologizing to him for being guarded. A month later, at a family barbecue, I heard him talking to my Uncle Dave. He was explaining his new philosophy on minimalism. It was Word, for Word the thesis paper I had just pulled an all-nighter to finish. When I tried to join the conversation, he talked over me. Son, let the adults speak. You are still finding your feet. He said it with a smile, but his eyes were like flint. The atmosphere in the house started to change. It was not that he was yelling, it was the way he moved. He would walk into a room where I was reading and just sigh, a long, heavy theatrical sigh. If I asked what was wrong, he would say nothing while staring at me with pure disappointment. He started slamming the cupboard doors, just a little too hard when I was nearby. The tension was a physical weight. One evening, I tried to set a boundary. I told him I wanted to keep my work projects private until they were finished. He stood up, towering over me, and the mask slipped. You think you are so original? He hissed. Everything you are, you got from me. Your talent, your wit, even that arrogant little smirk. You are just a rough draft of the man I already am. The next week, I found out he would call my boss. He told my manager that I was struggling with personal stability issues, and that he, as a concerned father, wanted to make sure I was not being too much of a burden. He was not trying to help. He was poisoning the well. When I confronted him, screaming this time, he recorded me on his phone. He sent that recording to my mother and sister with the caption, I am worried. He is becoming violent. I do not know who this person is anymore. He was erasing my character and replacing it with a narrative of his own making, using my own reactions to his abuse as the evidence. Every time I tried to defend myself, I was just providing him with more footage for his smear campaign. I remember sitting on the floor of my room, my hands shaking so hard, I could not tie my shoes, wondering when the real me had disappeared, and this unstable version he created had taken over. Looking back with the help of a professional, I can finally name the weapons he used to dismantle my reality. The first was blame shifting. In his world, there was no such thing as his mistake. If he went through my journals, it was because I was too secretive. If he sabotaged my job, it was because I was unstable. This tactic works because it forces the victim into a defensive crouch. You spend all your energy proving your innocence instead of questioning their guilt. You start to believe that if you could just be better or more open, the abuse would stop. It is a trap where the only way to win is to stop playing. Then there was the hot and cold dynamic. He would spend a week treating me like his protege, taking me out to dinner, telling me I was the only person who truly understood him. Then, without warning, he would go ice cold. He would not look at me for days. This creates a psychological effect called intermittent reinforcement. It is the same thing that makes gambling addictive. You crave the high of his approval so much that you are willing to endure any amount of cold to get it back. You become a beggar for your own father's basic decency. He also mastered ambient abuse. This is the quiet manipulation, the heavy sighs, the eye rolls, the way he would walk out of a room the second I enter. It is designed to keep you in a state of constant hyper-vigilance. You are always scanning his face for signs of an impending storm. It is exhausting. It wears down your nervous system until you are too tired to fight back. Finally, the smear campaign. By the time I realized what was happening, he had already spent months, maybe years, whispering in the ears of our relatives. He painted himself as the long-suffering father dealing with a troubled, ungrateful son. He stole my stories and my personality traits so that when I tried to claim them, I looked like the one who was copying him. He did not just want to control me, he wanted to be the better version of me in the eyes of the world. Sound familiar? Have you ever had someone tell your own story back to you as if it were theirs? The fallout was not a clean break. There was no movie moment where the family stood up and pointed at him. In fact, many of them still believe his version of the story. I had to move 3 states away just to breathe. Even now, the situation is ongoing. I have had to adopt the gray rock method, making myself as uninteresting as a dull gray rock whenever we have to communicate. I do not share my wins, I do not share my losses, and I certainly do not share my personality. It is a lonely way to exist within a family. I have had to accept that I have lost my mother and sister to his narrative for now. They see my distance as proof of the instability he warned them about. The emotional consequences are heavy. Some days I catch myself in the mirror and wonder if my interests are actually mine, or if they are just things I held on to because he could not take them. My pulse still spikes when I see a text from him, even if it is something mundane. I am in therapy twice a week, working through the flea behaviors, the manipulative habits I picked up just to survive him. It is not a Hollywood ending. I did not get an apology, and I did not get my family back. What I got was my own life, even if it feels a little quiet and empty right now. I have started documenting every interaction we have, keeping a paper trail of the truth, not for the police, but for my own sanity. When the gaslighting starts to make the walls tilt, I read my notes. I remind myself I am the original. He is just a shadow. The grief is real, but so is the silence. And for the first time in years, the silence is mine. If this story feels familiar to you, if you feel like you are losing the rights to your own life, pay attention. There are 3 red flags that are never just a phase. First, look for the identity harvest. If someone starts adopting your specific quirks, stories, or hobbies while simultaneously devaluing you for having them, they are trying to replace you. Second, watch for the no-fault zone. If a person has never, in 10 years, given a sincere apology that did not end with the word, but you are dealing with a master of blame shifting. Third, trust the atmosphere. If you feel a sense of dread when you hear their keys in the lock, even if they have not said a mean word yet, your body is picking up on ambient abuse. To protect yourself, start 3 habits today. 1, the information diet. Stop telling them your secrets, your dreams, and your successes. They cannot steal what they do not know exists. 2, documentation. Keep a digital journal they cannot access. Write down what happened immediately after a conflict. Your memory is the first thing they will attack. 3, external validation. Find one person, a therapist, a friend outside the circle, who sees the real you. You need a mirror that is not distorted. You are not crazy. You are not ungrateful. And you are not a rough draft. You are the author of your own story. If you recognized yourself in this, it is time to stop trying to convince them of the truth and start living it for yourself. You cannot win a debate with someone who is committed to misunderstanding you. The only way to win is to walk away with your identity intact. Leave a comment below if you have ever felt like someone was trying to become you. Let us talk about it. Be safe, and remember, your truth is yours alone.